I bow to the very Lord Ishvara in you all. Let us begin with the prayer to the sage Patanjali. Yogena chittasya padena vacha malam sharirasya cha vaidyatena yopakarottam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi Hari Om. Namaste to all of you. Sage Patanjali, this Prarthana Shloka, which was given to all of us by Bhoja Raja, in itself contains the greatness of sage Patanjali. What is his contribution is encapsulated in this Prarthana Shloka. Yogena chittasya. Ultimately, what we want is to get rid of the impurities so that we can enjoy this life. Yoga or Vedanta is not against having joy. It is about having things in the right way and having an unalloyed bliss. The first obstacle is the mind. The impurities of the mind are the ones which really prevent us from enjoying our true nature, which is essentially the Sat Chit Ananda Swarupa. Through yoga, Patanjali has helped us to get rid of these impurities. Yogena chittasya. Through proper practice of yoga, in the way Patanjali has given, we have to re-emphasize because there are a lot of altered versions of yoga that we see these days. Therefore, that is why I also support the initiatives taken by Vedic Wellness University. We should have the roots in our Vedas. Then everything will follow in the right groove. Else, it is all will be bound for variety of misinterpretations and sometimes, unfortunately, moving away from the main purpose itself. So Patanjali said, Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. There are a lot of vrittis, thoughts, that I think we don't need to really deliberate on this because we see most people are ATM. ATM means always thinking machines. Always some thought or the other is going on. And we have come to a state where we think that we cannot be without thinking. Patanjali says it is not so. You have forgotten the off button for the mind, and it is very much possible to switch off the mind, use it only when you want. And Patanjali says it is an antakarana. It is an instrument. It is not the boss, it is an instrument. When the mind is used as an instrument, it's a wonderful thing. When it becomes the master, then a lot of sufferings will ensue. So Patanjali focuses on yoga, chitta vritti nirodha, how to move to a stage of cessation of oscillations in the mind. And he gives several approaches. There are several approaches, among which I will just mention two. One is Kriya Yoga. Patanjali, according to Patanjali, Kriya Yoga means tapaswadhyaya ishvara pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. So it's nice to discuss, but because of paucity of time, we will not go into those details. Even without the practice of various other things like asana, etc., which are useful, no doubt, Patanjali said there is a path called Kriya Yoga through which you can attain the highest goal of yoga. Then the other path that Patanjali gives is called Ashtanga Yoga, the eightfold path consisting of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are the eightfold paths. And he details each of these things. Patanjali is a spiritual scientist. He does not really assume anything. He will define everything, and he has defined. I think we need to deliberate on each of these, what Patanjali has said, and each of them have the potential to take us in the right path. So thus, Patanjali has helped us to move the mind from turbulence to tranquility. Therefore, Yogena Chittasya, he has helped us to cleanse the mind through yoga. The next thing that comes is Padena Vacha. Padena Vacha means he has given clarity and purity to the language through grammar. But this is a disputable statement according to various scholars. Some scholars believe that it is not the same Patanjali who has done the Vyakarana. The Yoga Patanjali is different, Vyakarana Patanjali is different. But for us, the ardent lovers of Yoga Patanjali, still this holds good because Patanjali has shown us how to express ourselves with minimum words. If we look at the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which consists of the psychology in its highest level, this has only 196 sentences called sutras. And each sutra has an average of about 8 words, not more. Some are less, some are little more, but average about 8 words. And if you write all these, or if you print all these 196 sutras, it just takes one A4 size sheet. So he has shown us how to use the words precisely, concisely. That is why it is called sutras. And to construct a sutra is not at all easy, very, very difficult. For example, if somebody asks me about, kindly explain about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience, and if there are no constraints, I will happily do. I will talk about maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But if somebody says, describe about yourself in just 8 words, then you see the struggle. This is true in any knowledge. The moment you say, don't use extra words, use minimal words, then the depth of the knowledge should be high. As the depth of the knowledge increases, the words you need to express the same would become small. That's how Patanjali constructed these sutras. Alpaksharam, asandigdham, saravat vishwato mukham, akshobam, anavadhyancha, sutram, sutravido viduhu. That is the definition of sutra. Economy of words, alpaksharam, asandigdham. It should not have any sort of um, you know doubtful thing there. There should be no dichotomy. It should be very precise. Then it should be concise. Then it should contain the gist of what you want to express, and it should be universally applicable. That is what Patanjali did, and Patanjali has shown how one should use the words. And he has also indicated to us by knowing how a person writes or speaks, you can make out whether he has the depth of knowledge or not. Therefore, rightfully, padena vacham, we can accept. Then the third aspect is malam sharirasya chavaidyakena. If you go to the books of history, there is some mention of Patanjali also writing about Ayurveda, through which the impurities in the body, the mala in the body, can be removed so that the health of the body can be maintained very well. But again, this is disputed. There are several scholars who argue that the Ayurveda Patanjali is different, the Yoga Patanjali is different. There is no match. It's okay for us. It is fair enough. But still, Patanjali has really contributed to this aspect also. That is possible when we examine what is the root cause of all the diseases. Now there are a lot of research going on. Each disease, they do in-depth research, let it be diabetes or hypertension or cancer. N number of research programs are going on where they try to find out the etiology of the disease and how to prevent it. But Patanjali goes a level more fundamental to this. According to Patanjali, why according to Patanjali? According to common sense, because whatever Patanjali writes is all common sense at a very, very simple level. Commonsensically, if you look at the root cause of all the diseases is the body itself. The body is the problem. If you look at sage Ramana, when he had the sarcoma wound on his forearm, a lot of people used to ask him, "Oh, what a terrible cancerous wound you have, Bhagavan." Then Bhagavan used to say, "Well, I don't have any wound. This body itself is a wound. The wound has another wound." That's what he used to say. So, body is actually the fundamental cause of all the diseases. Now the question is, how not to get the body itself? In other words, how not to be reborn? How to escape from the cycle of birth and death? Well, Patanjali gives you step-by-step methodology as to how to break this cycle of karma. Through that, he shows us the path how not to be reborn. It is all clearly detailed in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which perhaps sometime later we will try to explore in step-by-step procedure. Look at how scientific, how precise, and how appealing is the methodology of sage Patanjali. And that way, malam sharirasya chavaidyakena, he has given such a medicine through which he has ensured that we are never reborn. In other words, we become immortal. That is the kind of amrita Patanjali has given. Therefore, we can easily recognize in all these three aspects the contribution of sage Patanjali, and this prayer then becomes really worthwhile for all of us to recite every day. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya chavaidyakena yopa karottam prabaram muninam patanjalim prahanjali Ranatosmi. To such a Patanjali, we should always revere and we should prostrate. And this is possible only if we understand the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and implement, because Patanjali himself begins the very first sutra, he says, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. It is Anushasana. We must bring it to the practice. It is a very, very, very important thing because he has recognized that mere just intellectual exercises are not enough. It is to be implemented. That is the most important thing. Intellect does not take us too far. In fact, all these things Patanjali has written to ensure that we drop this intellect and clearly see what is behind it, the Supreme Self. I remember what Swami Vivekananda said. Swami Vivekananda was in the US. We all know he became a superhero after his address at the Chicago Forum of Religions. And a press person asks Vivekananda, because Vivekananda was highly intellectual. Then he asked, who is your teacher? For which Swami Vivekananda answered, my teacher is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He said, he is an illiterate person. He is a person who doesn't know how to pronounce the word pension, because Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to tell a student when he was getting pension, they had to go and collect it. Then he used to tell them, go and please bring my pencil. Then they used to tell him, Master, it is not pencil, it is pension. He was that illiterate, but so realized. Then the press person who asked the question was really surprised. Then he asked, how can you are such a intellectual person, how can he be your master? Then Vivekananda answered, yes. How often I think if it would have been so nice if I was able to take my intellect and throw it into the Ganges, I would have been happy. You call me intellectual, but I am unfit even to loosen the shoes of my master. So this is the limitation of the intellect, and to go beyond the mind is the whole yogic sadhana. Such a thing Sage Patanjali has given. So I prostrate to such a sage Patanjali, and I do conclude my talk here. Thank you all for your very patient listening. Namaste.